requirement because I was planning on moving after I got my degree. And so I did that, and they basically convinced me to stay there, and they hired me for the job that I wrote the job description for and the salary requirements for. So that was pretty cool. Had some great leaders along the way in those organizations that I learned a lot from. And I also had an extremely bad leader, at least one, that I also learned a lot from. And some of the stuff I learned was good and some wasn't good, but I carry all of that stuff with me today. Eventually, our company, we did an acquisition, and I got moved into more of a technical organization, which was a lot of fun, but it was also very stressful. And I think about a year and a half or 3 years later, I can't remember, I was laid off. And that started my journey as an entrepreneur. I've done a lot of web stuff. I created a website for job seekers. It's like a CRM for job seekers. And I have an international team that I work with to keep that website up and going and relevant and functional. I wrote 3 books, ended up professionally speaking, which means it's like public speaking, but professional speakers get paid to do it. And that's really the only distinction between public and professional speaking. I started figuring out how to make more money when I was speaking. And so I created products, which my first one was a DVD on how to use LinkedIn, because that's what my first book was on. And eventually I was introduced to Pluralsight, which you may have heard of. Clifford, do you guys all have access to Pluralsight through the school? Okay. Got it. Okay. So anyways, I was introduced to Pluralsight. I'm assuming people here send me an email, albajason@gmail.com. And if I have any 30-day passes available, and you promise that you're going to use it to learn stuff, then I am happy to share. I started out with Pluralsight about 10 years ago. It was 10 years in 2012, and it's been an amazing experience. From the beginning. The last 10 years have been amazing, and I've learned a ton. And I have 36 courses there. They're on soft skills. I continue to do speaking, although with COVID, I'm not traveling like I used to. I continue to do a lot of writing. I'm involved in a few internet businesses, and I love what I do. Mentoring is, I think, one of the most important things that has helped me get to where I am. And so this morning, it's 9:00 at night for me. I want to share some ideas. I have 7 ideas that I would like to share with you about mentoring. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I would say that two of the most important things that I've done for my career is to have an internship, which was an ability to have real life work experience while I was getting my degree. The college one Saturday after working on some projects, and my professor, one of the professors, was walking out in front of me, and I said, "Hey, what am I looking at? Like, how much money am I going to make when I graduate?" And he says, "Well, you'll start out on a help desk, and you're going to make this much money," which wasn't enough for my family. And then after a few years, you'll work your way up and work your way up and work your way up. And I said, "Well, I don't want to do that. Like, is there any way I could not go into an entry level role?" And he said, "Yeah, you need to get an internship." And it just so happened that next week, a company was hiring an intern, and that's the internship that I got for a year and a half. So number one, if you can get any relevant and real work experience, even if that means you kind of open up your own web development shop and make websites or whatever language or technology you're doing, do it on your own as a consultant, even while you're in school. I remember when I graduated, a lot of people in my program were like, okay, now what do I do? How do I go find a job? And I already had a job. I had worked for a year and a half as an intern, and the company that wanted to hire me was, they were, I had already worked for them as a contractor. And so it was very, very easy for me to slip into a nice role. The second thing that has really had an impact on my career is mentoring. And I think it's important to recognize that probably most of my mentoring has not been formal mentoring relationships. Okay, so there should be people in your life, like professors, people in your neighborhood, a parent, somebody that has a role that you want to have. Even people on Twitter, I'm very connected in the tech space, and some of those people have, in a sense, mentored me. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just wanted to hit home that mentoring has had a huge impact on any success that I've had in my entire career. So I'm going to share 7 things with you, and I want you to write each of these down. And feel free to ask questions. Hit me up on Twitter. Email me, albajason@gmail.com, whatever. I'm more than happy to follow up because, we don't have enough time to talk about every single thing. The first one is perhaps the most important. I want you to ask someone to be your mentor. And I'm talking about a formal mentoring relationship, and we'll talk about informal relationships in a little bit. But I feel like, especially students are in a position where they're like, well, I don't know if I can talk to that person. I don't know if they'll give me the time of day. I don't know, maybe when I graduate, that's a better time for them to be my mentor. I love it when people come to me and they're ambitious and they're proactive and they ask. I actually I'm involved in various youth communities in the neighborhood where I live, and I'm surprised that so many people want to do things that I've done, and they want to talk to me about it, but they never ask me. It's almost like they're waiting for me to propose it to them. And so I don't know, if this is culturally appropriate for where you are, but I'm going to suggest that the world is a very small place now with technology and communication and social media and stuff like that. And a lot of people that are willing to help you simply just need to be asked. Okay. So when you ask for a mentoring relationship, and I have this in my mentoring courses on Pluralsight, which, if you want a 30-day pass, just send me an email, albajason@gmail.com. You need to go to somebody and say, for example, I'm going to ask Clifford for a mentoring relationship. I'm going to say, hey, Clifford, I don't know if you've been following what I've been doing, but I've been in school for this program, and I'm going to graduate in 2023 or whatever, and I'm looking for this type of a job or a role, and I really need somebody that has experience in the industry to help me understand how this works and how to find my first job and how to excel at my first job. And so I was wondering if maybe over the next few months we can get together once a month, and I have very specific questions that I would love for you to answer. And all of that invitation has a purpose. The last thing that I said, I have very specific questions. That tells me that you're prepared, right? I don't want to sit down with you for 30 or 60 minutes and just have you complain about stuff or have you ask really stupid questions, which I've had some mentees do. And I'm thinking, you could have just Googled this, honestly. You could go Google that information. I don't want you to waste my time, right? And so I think it's really critical that you, number one, I'm going to give you permission if you feel like you need it. You don't need it, but I'm going to give you permission to ask someone to be your mentor, okay? Number two, ask them with purpose. Don't just say, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" I don't know what that means. I don't know what we're gonna do. You kind of own this mentoring relationship. Like they're busy, they got stuff going on. Maybe they've never mentored before, and you need to make sure that in a 30 or 60-minute meeting, you get what you need out of it. It might be, "Hey, you know what? Here's two of my target companies. I'd love to work at these companies. How do I network in? Like, how do I find out who is at those companies? I've already looked on LinkedIn, but do you know anybody that can help me and have these right conversations? And when I have a conversation with somebody, how do I, what is that conversation, and how do I follow up with them and stuff like that?" So, anyways, number one is make sure you ask for a mentoring relationship. Number two, and this is really important because you might ask people and they never, like, you don't get a mentor. Like, nobody comes and mentors you, right? Because everybody's busy or whatever. While you're waiting for that mentor to come along, start giving. So number one is ask, number two is give. What do you give? Give your own time. Help other people. Answer questions. Motivate other people, right? Give them kind words of motivation and encouragement. Maybe you give them introductions when you're at a point where you trust them, and you know that they'll respect the introductions that you give them. Okay, so I want you to give. I want you to give of your time and be open. I think that as I've been in this career for 20 years or whatever, what I found is that people who give freely get more from others. When you give, other people respect that, and they're like, "Hey, Jason's a giving guy. I'm going to open my network to him, or I'm going to help him with an introduction or work or whatever," any of that stuff. As you give, it might not be right away, but in your career, it'll come back to you in a good way. What I found is giving is very rewarding. Like, I feel good when I help other people. So number two is give. Number three, you don't need a formal mentor to learn from a mentor. Okay. So should you have a mentor? Absolutely. Go find somebody that'll mentor you at this phase in your career. It might even be your school counselor or something like that, right? But if you're not finding a mentor, then become a student, and you're already a student and you're learning how to do what we call hard skills or technical skills. But what I want you to do is start to learn from other people. Listen how they found their job. Listen to how they got promotions. Listen to who they talk to and who they follow and who they pay attention to. Listen to what books they're reading, right? Start paying attention to people that have the career or the life that you want to have, and absorb as much as you can. That's what you're going to do in a mentoring relationship. Now, these people might not know who you are because you're stalking them on the internet, right? You're just reading their stuff, and they've never seen any of your stuff. But that's okay. As you work towards a formal mentoring relationship, start paying more attention to other people around you. Okay, number four. Oh, sorry, let me go back to number three. The other thing with informal mentoring and changing mentors as you have changing circumstances, right? The mentor that helps you get your first job might not be the mentor that helps you get an executive role in 10 or 20 years from now, okay? Or 5 or whatever. So it's okay to switch mentors. The other thing is, it's okay to have multiple mentors. I have a mentor that helps me understand finances. I have a mentor that helps me understand relationships and networking and people skills. I have a mentor that helps me understand hardware or software. So you're gonna have different mentors, and some of these mentors, you might have a primary mentor that you meet frequently with, whereas other mentors, you might just meet with them once a quarter, or you might just send them emails, right? And ask them very specific questions. All right, number 4, say thank you. Um, I have given a lot over the years. I've given ideas, I've given introductions. I actually have given jobs to people, not with my organizations, but there was a time when somebody was interviewing me for a role, and I said, you know what, I'd love to take this role, but this guy that I know would be way better than me for what you guys need. And I talked to him, and he ended up getting hired. I gave him a job, right? I've given motivation and encouragement and all kinds of stuff, and more often than not, people don't come back and say thank you. When they do say thank you, I remember them, right? It makes me think, okay, they listened to me, they paid attention to me, they valued what I said, all of that stuff. And what does that do? It makes me want to give more to them, because I know that when I give something to them, they're actually going to appreciate it. That brings me to the next one, which is follow up. If I give you an introduction, specifically on introductions, but if I tell you to read an article or read a book or listen to a podcast or anything, I want you to come back to me and say, hey, Jason, in our last meeting, you talked about this, and I actually went and talked with that person. So thank you so much for the introduction. Or you even just say, I emailed that person, and hopefully we're going to get together in a week or two, right? It doesn't have to be a successful thing that you're following up on. Like, hey, I looked for the book at the library, but I couldn't find it. I'm going to keep looking for it. I just want to know that the stuff that I gave you in our meeting actually went somewhere, that you paid attention. So one of the things that I really, really like, I was on a mentoring call about 2 months ago, and this guy, he's starting out in a marketing firm, an online marketing firm, and he was asking about marketing funnels. And so I was talking about funnels with him. He knew nothing about marketing funnels, so which was great, because then I could start at the very beginning. And he said, as we were talking and I had a bunch of ideas, he said, hold on. I'm writing this down. I'm just taking notes. He said that multiple times. And he thought that it would annoy me that he kept slowing me down from my conversation, right? But really, I kept thinking, thank goodness he's writing this down, because there's a lot of details that we're talking about, okay? So part of number 5 is going to be follow up, which is go back to the person and say, hey, Clifford, thank you so much. That was, I really got a lot out of our last conversation. And I wanted to let you know, you mentioned this book, this podcast, and this person. Here's where I'm at with each of those. Guess what? The next time I meet with Clifford, he's going to know that if he gives me a recommendation, I'm actually going to pay attention to it, right? He's not just throwing out something that's going to get thrown away. He's giving valuable stuff to someone who actually cares about it. And so part of that is you got to stay organized. Like if I'm in a mentoring meeting, I'll give you 30 ideas, which I would, because I have a lot of ideas. I don't want you to come back and say, what did we talk about last month? It was really good, but I just don't remember what the things were. Well, guess what? As a mentor, I'm not going to remember either. It's your job to keep on top of that. All right, number 6. Always be on time to your meetings. If you're meeting with someone at a restaurant, if you're meeting with someone on a call or a webinar, don't be late. I work with a CEO who's always late, and he knows it, and we've talked about this, and he knows I don't like it, and he's actually gotten a lot better, but he's always running late, and what it does is it shows disrespect, okay? And your mentor is typically someone that's going to be giving you for free out of their time and their ideas. And when you're late, you're showing that you don't really care and you don't respect. Now, that's not to say that you can't be late or that you can't miss it, right? Maybe an emergency happens or you have technical issues or whatever. Communicate. I want you to communicate as soon as you can and as much as you can. Hey, I'm sorry, but we're actually going to be, I'm going to be like 15 minutes late. Something happened with my car or the bus or, my internet went down or whatever. And so what that means is maybe you're getting like cell phone numbers or WhatsApp information or multiple ways to get in touch with someone so that they're not sitting there with their time scheduled out and they're like, where is this person, right? I tell people when I get into a working relationship with them that I value communication. I'm okay if you have problems. Everybody has problems. I'm okay if you're going to be late on projects. That's okay. But I need you to communicate. I recently had a situation with one of my workers where I give him a project and he had about 4 or 6 weeks. And I thought things were going well because of the communication we had. But near the deadline, I found out that he was really stuck and didn't know how to do the work. And he'd never communicated that to me. And so I had to go back to my customer, push back the deadline because I was going to have to take this over. And I wish, weeks earlier, he could have said, you know what? I don't get how to do this. I don't know how to do this. But instead, he didn't communicate. And he felt very uncomfortable coming to me close to the deadline saying that he wasn't going to be able to do it. So I want you to be on time. I want you to show respect to your mentor, which goes along with showing gratitude, which is one of the other ones we talked about. But I also want you to communicate. One of the best ways to do that and to follow up is in an email. And that the reason why is because you can use an email follow-up and list out things that you talked about and maybe even action items and a follow-up from those action items, right? So what you're doing is you're creating a trail, a history, a written history that you can actually go back and look at weeks and months of this and know where you're at with your mentor and what the conversations have been and stuff like that. Okay, I think that was 6. So the last one, actually we already talked about this one. The last one that I had listed, but we've talked about it, is that no single mentor will give you everything. You need to make sure that you are changing your mentors over time based on your circumstances, okay? So what that also means is you might have a mentor that's great for you right now, but you'll outgrow them maybe in 6 months or 18 months or something like that. Just be okay with the idea that over time, you'll have different mentors to help you through different stages of your career. So those are the main things that I wanted to share as far as mentoring goes. I'm happy to jump over to the question section right now. But just remember, if anybody wants a Pluralsight code, and if I have them available, send me an email, albajason@gmail.com, and that is a 30-day pass. So if you're learning a specific programming language or networking, hardware, backend, front end, whatever, you'll probably find some good courses in Pluralsight to help you out. All right, Clifford, let's jump over to the question section. And I love to see your face. So if you can turn your video on, that'd be great. You don't have to, but if you can, that'd be great. Yeah. So in the first thing that I talked about with asking to be a mentor, I really do think that the most important aspect is that I know that you're serious about this, right? And so when you say, here's where I'm at, I'm a student and this is the first job that I'd like to have. I know I need some help with maybe learning how to network into a company or learning how to find new clients or whatever it is that you need a mentor for, right? I've actually had people come to me and say, "Hey, Jason, I want you to be my mentor," and I'm like, "You have no idea why. You don't know. I mean, what I can give you is very big, and what you need is very big. But what I need you to say is, here are two or three specific things that I know that I need help with, right? And I think that's the most important thing is that you're coming to me prepared and ambitious and strategic, and not just like because I can't help you figure out what you want to be when you grow up. That's not me. There are people out there like counselors like to help you figure that stuff out. But I want you to say, here's where I'm at. This is what I need. I think you'd be a great mentor to help me get through this part of my career. Can you help me out? Um, if somebody texts me, if I'm old, I'm 48. Okay, I don't want to start this relationship on text. Like I said, I like to see your faces on video, right? So if you're gonna ask a question, I want to see your face. I think it's okay if you text someone. That's how the world operates, and whatever messaging app that you have, it's okay. All right, it's not horrible. But we're going to talk about some intimate things. We're going to talk about some real issues that I have as a mentee, and I want to make sure that we have a real relationship. And so I might feel uncomfortable as a mentor sending you stuff over text that really should be talking about face to face, right? So okay if we start out on text, but I really think that you need to get to the point where you're either picking up the phone or getting on a web call or meeting in person and having a real more professional relationship. Yeah, that's actually a great question because you might think and you start it, and within a couple meetings, you find out they're horrible mentors. Like they don't have the experience you need, don't have good answers or good advice for you. They're hard to get a hold of. They miss the meetings, all that stuff. I would start out with somebody. Okay, talk about this in my course. Sometimes we feel like the right mentor is someone who's very far ahead of us in their career. Like, I want to be a CEO one day, so my mentor should be a CEO. Actually, if I can figure out the path to CEO, and maybe put some titles in that path, I don't need to have the CEO as my first mentor. Maybe this guy here is my first mentor, just because that's a person who maybe they're a few years ahead of me or even a year ahead of me, right? So I wouldn't be too choosy on who your mentor is, but I would look for somebody who has done or who has experience with what you want, right? Don't go to somebody who's never written a book and ask them how to write a book, or don't go to someone who's never become a professional speaker and ask them how to be a professional speaker. They might have a lot of ideas, but until you've actually gone through the process, you're not going to be able to know, some of the problems associated. So I agree. Look for people in your field, look for people in your target company or target organization. Um, but you really do need to find that right person. Let me address this one from Pamela. Thank you for the question. What's a common mistake you see in mentorship? Um, I'm gonna say that the biggest mistake is that the mentee flakes out. They just don't follow up, and they might disappear for a few months, and then they come back and they say, "Oh, hey, Jason, can we have another mentoring call?" And I'm like, "Dude, we haven't talked for 3 months. But you said you wanted to do this monthly, okay? We haven't talked for months. Um, and the last time we talked, you never followed up with me. So I don't even know if you did anything that I said, right? You don't have to do everything that I say to do, but I want to know that what I shared with you from my free time, what you listened to and paid attention, right? So I'm going to say that's probably the most common mistake is that you don't stick to the schedule, because if I'm a professional and you say you want to meet monthly, like every Thursday at 11 o'clock, every third Thursday at 11 o'clock, I'm going to put that on my calendar. Well, you better put it in your calendar too, right? Because once I get the sense that you're not paying attention, I really don't feel much incentive to spend time with you. So I would say that's probably the biggest issue. Good question, Pamela. Thank you.
I wanted to ask.
Yeah, Clement.
Okay, so how do you know when you're ready to look for a mentor? Like you just can't start. Say for example, me, I want to be a web developer. I, I need to a specific level before I can go and look for a mentor. How do you know when you're ready?
Well, this goes back to that idea of CEO mentor versus a mentor that's just a few months ahead of me, right? And so, if I were you, I would look for people who had just started a web shop, or anybody who's made a website or multiple websites for money, right? So once you find people who have made websites for money, whether they own their own company or what, I would say that you can go talk to them and say, hey, here's when I graduate, here's what my passions are. I actually want to do what you do. I think it's really cool. Can we spend some time? And I have some very specific questions for you, and hopefully that's something. I like the idea that you have questions for them, because that's telling me that you're facing a direction. You've already thought through some of the issues. You're not at a beginner level with questioning, right? You've actually thought and pondered it. So I would say, to answer your question, how do you know when you're ready? You're ready right now. You just need to figure out who the right mentor is, and that mentor, it could be a web programmer, right? Or it could be a marketing person, somebody that mentors you on finding your first clients. It could be an SEO person, right? So somebody that mentors you on expanding your product offering from web stuff to web plus SEO, right? Make a website for somebody and charge them, say, $500, and then get them on your SEO program where they pay $100 a month for you to do some SEO stuff, right? So I would say you're ready, and your mentor right now might be a professor, might be a counselor. But I'll tell you right now, my experience with professors and school counselors is they've never done this stuff. They work in school. A lot of them went from school back to school. They never went out and did a web company or worked in industry or something like that. So you got to be really careful who you choose as your mentor. Just make sure that someone that has done what you want to do.
Good morning.
Hi,
I'm
Janine.
Hi. I'm from Rwanda, and thank you for being here today. My
Welcome.
yeah. My question is, if maybe you have done a mistake and you have connected to a wrong mentor, how can you, maybe say bye? I don't know, or how can you disconnect from that person because that's like bad.
Yeah,
So
that's a great question, because it'll probably happen, and it's happened to me where I've gotten into a formal relationship with someone, and it clearly was not the right person. I might say, hey, I really appreciate your time and your willingness. Some things have come up, and I'm not ready for this mentoring relationship right now. And that's not lying. What you're finding is that there's a mismatch, right? You thought it was going to be a good fit, but it turned out that there's a mismatch. And if there's a mismatch, you can tell them. You can say, I've been thinking about where I'm at, and I need somebody else to help me out. I wouldn't do that because I feel like they're going to come back and be like, I'm never going to help you again. It just might be that the timing is wrong. Okay. So I would just say, hey, some things changed and some of my needs changed. And so I really appreciate your willingness to help me. But I'm going to put this on pause right now, and I might revisit it in the next year or two. And that I think that's a respectful way that doesn't say that they don't have that they can't help you, right? That they're worthless in helping you. And but it leaves the door open so that later on maybe they are the right person to help mentor you. Let me have an addendum to that answer. It could be that you thought that they were going to help mentor you in a specific area, and clearly they're not good mentors in that area. Another option is that you go back to them and say, hey, I actually need your help with this different thing. Can we shift gears and talk about a different topic? And now you've gone from like setting up a web business to, how do I network into a company or something like that. So that way, if they're really willing to help you and anxious to help you, they still can help you, but you're not spinning wheels, and asking for stuff that they're not really qualified or competent to help you with.
thank you. Got it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. I found that some of those long-term mentorships just tend to die away, where you might say, "Hey, Clifford, thank you so much. When I first came to you, I wanted help with this specific project or whatever, and now I'm there. Like I've accomplished it and I've achieved it, and I really, really appreciate your help. I'd still like to chat with you, but maybe we move our conversation from every month to every 6 months, right? And so in your mind, even you switch from a learning mentor mode where you have typically the mentor is somebody who kind of has more to give and you have more to receive, right? But eventually this is going to happen where you kind of equalize your status in the relationship. Um, and so you switch from a mentoring role or mode over to maybe a networking mode where you're just checking in once or twice a year. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think the most important part is to have the conversation and be extremely gracious and grateful, and let them know how valuable the conversations have been with them. And I think that'd be a very nice way to wrap up a mentoring relationship. Um, when you get into a mentoring relationship, you're not marrying the person. Probably, I don't know. Maybe some people marry their mentors. Uh, but but when I go into a mentoring relationship, I look at the person and I think, okay, I need this out of the relationship. I don't need everything. I don't need to learn how to parent from you, and I don't need to learn about your religion. I don't need to learn about how to be a better spouse, or I just need this specific thing. And so I actually have good working relationships with people who are on polar opposites of the political spectrum. Well, guess what? I don't talk politics with them. I don't care about their politics. They might talk about it all the time on Facebook or whatever, but I'm going to them for a very specific thing. And I think that's important to keep in mind as you start and maintain a mentoring relationship. They might do things that you would never do. They might have ideas that you really aren't drawn towards or attracted to, but that kind of doesn't matter, right? That's their life, and they're allowed to have a personal life just the same way as you're allowed to have your personal life. Maybe learn from it, right? I think a lot of us need to learn to be more quiet about some of those polarizing things and the things that might push people away. We feel like we need to put everything out there, but that might be getting us out of a job or keeping us from getting customers. Maybe leave all that, write it in a journal. Write it in a book, right? So learn that from them, but focus on what the purpose of your mentorship is. And the purpose might be, how do I go from student to an employee? And don't even worry about the rest of that stuff, right? So I know that was your last question. We only have a minute or two left. I just want to share one thought. I said at the very beginning of this that this is one of the most important things I've done for my career. And I know it can feel very uncomfortable asking someone to be a mentor, especially if it's regularly, like every month or twice a month or four times a month or whatever. It can feel kind of weird that you're imposing on them. But I definitely would encourage you um, to ask and start a pattern of finding and having mentors in your career, because you should have that for the rest of your career. On the flip side of that, I invite you to start mentoring other people. You know, you might not mentor someone on how to get a job if you're still in school, but maybe you mentor a freshman that's just starting school, or you mentor someone that wants to go into the program that you're in, or whatever, right? But I invite you to start thinking about mentoring as a part of your career, both by having a mentor and by being a mentor. I would tell a mentor to be open about their stuff, like advice and stuff like that. A lot of people don't have much experience in a mentoring relationship, and so they might not know to follow up. The mentee might not know to follow up or to say thank you or whatever. And so this is something that you would coach them through. So if I were your mentor and we talked about something last week, I would start our next meeting. I would say, hey, here's what we talked about last time we chatted. Do we need to talk about any more of that? And by the way, did you do the 3 things that I talked about? Let's recommended. Let's talk about those 3 things. And if you start every mentoring meeting with that follow-up, where you can talk about what they were supposed to have done, then they know that during this meeting, they better take notes and they better pay attention. And they better do it before your next meeting, because they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you whether you did it or not and what you learned from it. So the advice I have is to be kind and be forgiving, allow people to be human, but also coach people through being a better mentee. It's my pleasure. All right. Hey, good luck, everybody. We'll see you online.
Thank you.